Hey everyone, welcome back. So for tonight's story, we're talking about Bunshinsaba, Korea's pencil and paper spirit communication ritual. If you're familiar with Ouija boards, think of Bunshinsaba as the Korean version, but more intimate, more binding. Multiple people hold a single pen together over paper-marked letters, numbers, yes and no. You ask questions. The pen moves. It spells answers. It's common among university students during exam season. A break from case law, citation formats, whatever else is crushing you. But unlike Western seances, Bunshinsaba feels less like a game and more like signing a contract. You invite something in, and if you don't sign out correctly, if you don't say goodbye 3 times, if you don't close the door properly, something stays. The door remains open, and what comes through isn't always what you expect. Tonight's story is about Suyeon, a university student in Seoul who performed Bunshinsaba during exam season in one late autumn. What follows is her account of what happened after. Thursday night, around 11:45, University Study Hall, 3rd floor, Seoul. The electronic chime went off. That beep warning students the building's about to lock. Suyeon was at desk 14 by the windows. Textbooks everywhere, 5 colors of highlighters, sticky notes covering every surface. 6 hours of studying without moving. Across from her were Hyejin and Minseo, classmates from some night elective they all hated. Legal documentation or something. One of those required. Courses that meets once a week and feels like it lasts your entire degree. They'd been there since 6 p.m. Memorizing definitions, case precedents, formatting requirements. By this point, all 3 were fried. Caffeine stopped working hours ago, their brains just moving through information without retaining anything. The place reeked of instant ramyeon. Someone always brought those cheap cups, and the smell lingered for days. Mixed with bleach wipes the janitors used. Fluorescent lights doing that constant electric hum you don't notice until everything else goes quiet. Hyejin slammed her textbook shut, made everyone jump. I can't. One more page and I'm literally forgetting my own name. Minseo stretched, joints popping, checked her phone. God, 6 hours. We need a break before I lose it. She scrolled through something, then looked up with that face people get when they think they've had a genius idea. Hey, you guys ever do Bunshinsaba? The pen thing where you ask spirits questions? I saw a video about it. We should try. Hyejin tilted her head, interested but skeptical. That thing where you hold a pen and it moves. Minseo nodded fast. Yeah. Apparently works better with 3 people. And we got paper, we got pens. We're here anyway, sitting in this depressing hall. Why not? Suyeon was skeptical. She didn't really believe in ghost stuff, but too tired to argue. Honestly, doing anything other than reading sounded good, even if it was completely ridiculous spirit communication. They weren't taking it seriously, just needed a distraction. The kind of thing exhausted students do at midnight when their brains are shutting down and they need 5 minutes of not memorizing citation formats. Minseo grabbed a blank sheet of paper from her notebook, started drawing this grid with her pen. Letters across the top in careful block print. She was weirdly neat about it. Like even for a stupid game, she wanted it perfect. Numbers down the left side. Yes in one corner and no in the other. Put a pen in the middle. Blue ballpoint. The cheap plastic kind the university hands out during orientation that everyone has 50 of. Okay, so Minseo said. We barely touch it. Just fingertips. Ask stuff. Pen moves. Spells out answers. When we're done, we say goodbye 3 times. That part's important, supposedly. You gotta close it properly or something sticks around. Ghost attaches or whatever. She said this last part all theatrical and spooky. Obviously not believing any of it. Just having fun with it. They positioned themselves around the table, each one extending a hand, fingertips resting on the pen so light it felt like it might roll off. Hyejin went first, voice kind of uncertain. Is anyone there? They waited. Nothing. Pen just sat there, totally still. Suyeon could hear her own heartbeat in the quiet, could hear Minseo breathing across from her, could smell the ramyun smell, and underneath that the old building smell. Decades of students stressed out of their minds in these halls. Then the pen moved, slow drag across the paper toward yes. They all looked at each other. Minseo frowned. Okay, who's moving it? Everyone denied it immediately. Hyejin laughed, but it came out nervous. All right, who are you? The pen moved again, slower this time, more deliberate. It dragged across the paper, stopping. Mok, Gyok, Cha. They stared at the paper. Not random marks, a whole word. Clear, intentional. Witness. Minseo asked, voice quieter now. Witness to what? Pen didn't move. Just sat there in the middle of the paper like it was waiting for the right question. Or maybe it had said what it needed to say. The mood had shifted without anyone quite noticing when. Gone from playful and joking to something heavier. Something that made Suyeon's chest feel tight, even though she couldn't explain why. Hyejin asked again, barely above a whisper. Are you angry? Pen moved immediately, fast. Straight to yes, no hesitation. Suyeon felt cold despite the heating, pumping warm air through the vents. I think we should stop. Like, now. Minseo and Hyejin agreed fast, suddenly way less enthusiastic about the whole thing. They said goodbye 3 times in unison. Minseo counted on her fingers to make sure, pulled their hands back, and Minseo grabbed the paper, crumpled it, shoved it deep in her backpack. Well, that was creepy as hell, Hyejin said, trying to laugh it off, but her voice was shaky. I'm going home before I start seeing ghosts in every shadow. You coming, Minseo? They packed up together, still talking about the pen movements, how someone must have been pushing it subconsciously, even though they all swore they weren't. Left around midnight, their voices fading down the hall. Suyeon stayed. She had another chapter to review before the exam next week, and she'd already paid for late-night study hall access, like 30,000 won for the month, so might as well use it. Study hall completely empty now. Just her at desk 14, fluorescent lights humming that electric buzz, faint sounds of the building settling, pipes knocking somewhere in the walls. She opened her textbook to the chapter on documentation protocols, tried to focus on the dense paragraphs in front of her, but her mind kept drifting back to the way the pen had spelled witness, clear and deliberate, and the way it had jerked toward yes when asked if it was angry, like something was genuinely pissed off on the other end of whatever door they'd opened. She told herself it was just suggestion, psychology, their hands unconsciously pushing the pen in directions that spelled words they expected to see. Nothing supernatural about it, group, think, or whatever. Then she heard it, scratching. Faint at first, like nails on a chalkboard but softer, plastic dragging across paper in slow circles. She looked down at her desk. The pen, same blue ballpoint from the Bunshinsaba ritual, sitting right where Minseo had left it, was rolling. Not random wobbling. Slow, deliberate circles like someone was guiding it with their fingertips, even though nobody was touching it. Suyeon stared. The pen stopped moving the instant she looked directly at it. became completely still, like it had never moved at all. She told herself it was vibrations, the heating system kicking on, her hand resting on the desk, creating imperceptible movement through the surface. Something rational. She picked up the pen quick, shoved it in her pencil case, zipped it shut hard enough the zipper caught. Scratching stopped immediately. She studied another hour and 15 minutes, forced herself to focus on the textbook, even though her concentration was completely shot now, checking the clock every few minutes. Until finally, at 1:15 a.m., she decided enough, packed up her things, slung her backpack over her shoulder, swiped her student badge at the study hall exit to log her departure. The university required badge access for late-night building use, partly for security, partly so they could track who was in the building if there was an emergency or fire or something. She walked home through empty Seoul streets, autumn air sharp and cold enough to sting her face, made her walk faster, pulling her jacket tighter around herself. By the time she reached her dorm, she'd almost convinced herself the pen rolling had been her imagination. Exhaustion playing tricks. 6 hours of studying does things to your brain. Nothing to worry about. Next morning, well, technically, same morning. She'd only slept like 4 hours. Suyeon was brushing her teeth, still half asleep. When she remembered, she could check the security portal. Students could view their own badge access logs, some transparency thing the university implemented after a safety incident a few years back. She pulled it up on her phone, scrolled through last night's entries. Entry at 10:32 p.m. when she'd arrived. Exit at 1:15 a.m. when she'd left. But right there between those times, at 11:58 p.m., there was another entry. Location, desk 14. Her exact desk. No name attached to the badge. Just a timestamp and location code. That was impossible. She'd been completely alone after Hyejin and Minseo left around midnight. Remembered the silence, the empty study hall, the feeling of being the only person on the entire third floor, maybe the entire building. She checked the log 3 times, kept refreshing the page, thinking it was a glitch. But it stayed there. She was already there, had been there the whole time. She went to campus security that afternoon between classes, asked to speak to someone about a possible system error. The guard on duty was this middle-aged guy who looked perpetually exhausted. He pulled up her access log on his computer, squinted at the screen, frowned. Huh, that's unusual. He clicked around, checked some things. Badge readers don't activate without a physical card swipe. System's pretty foolproof. Must be a technical glitch. I'll file a report. But he looked uneasy when he said it, like he didn't quite believe his own explanation. Suyeon asked, voice coming out smaller than she intended. Can I see the CCTV footage from that time? Like from 11:58. The guard hesitated. That apparently wasn't standard procedure. Students weren't supposed to request footage. But it was a slow afternoon. Security office empty. And honestly, he seemed curious now too. Yeah, all right, let's take a look. They watched the footage together on a small monitor in the corner of the security office. Grainy black and white feed from the study hall camera. Empty room, 11:58 p.m. timestamp burning in the corner. Suyeon's desk visible in the frame, her backpack on the floor beside the chair, textbook spread across the surface in that messy way she always studied. Empty chair. No person anywhere in the shot. Then, and Seoul felt her stomach drop. The pen on her desk started moving. Slow circles, deliberate, methodical. No hand touching it, no strings, no air vent wind that would cause that kind of precise circular motion. Just the pen, rolling in perfect circles like invisible fingers, were guiding it along a track only it could see. The guard went pale. Actually pale, color draining from his face. He rewound the footage, watched it again. Pen moved the same way. "I've worked campus security 8 years," he said quiet, not looking at her. "Never seen anything like this. Not once." He paused the footage, pen frozen mid-circle. "You sure you didn't? I mean, you weren't near the desk at that time?" Suyeon shook her head. She'd been sitting there the whole time, but the pen had been across the desk, nowhere near her hands. And the camera didn't lie. There was nobody there. She left the security office feeling like the ground wasn't quite solid under her feet. That physical sensation of dread settling into her ribs and staying there, making it hard to breathe properly. Over the next 3 days, the scratching followed her everywhere. And I mean everywhere. Different study halls across campus. She tried the one in the engineering building, the 24-hour library study rooms, even the basement of the student center nobody used because it smelled weird. Same scratching. Same slow circular pattern like something dragging, plastic across paper in loops that never quite completed. Suyeon stopped sleeping well. The sound would woke her up at night coming from different places. Her desk drawer even though it was closed. Her backpack on the floor even though she'd zipped it shut. The windowsill where she'd left the pen the night before. She threw away the original pen from the ritual. Bought a whole new pack from the convenience store. Threw those away too when the scratching kept going. Wasn't about the physical object anymore. She realized that. It was about what the pen represented. Witnessing. By day 5, she was functioning on maybe 3 hours of sleep per night. Drinking so much coffee, her hands shook constantly. Brain moving through this thick fog, where everything felt delayed and unreal. Started avoiding being alone completely. Tried to always be in crowded spaces where the ambient noise, conversations, typing, coffee machines, music through someone's headphones would drown out the scratching. But even in the packed student center with like 50 people around her, she could still hear it. Faint, but persistent. Coming from inside her backpack. From inside her own head, maybe. Started researching Bunshinsaba online between classes. Scrolling through forums, old blog posts from 2010, anywhere people talked about it. Found warnings buried in comment sections. Don't sign out wrong or something attaches to you. My friend did this and heard voices for months. The pen kept moving in her room every night until she got it blessed by a shaman. But Suyeon and the others had signed out properly. Said goodbye 3 times. Minseo had counted on her fingers to make sure. Followed the procedure exactly. So why was this happening? Then she remembered the answer the pen had spelled during the ritual. Witness. And that question Minseo had asked that got no response. Witness to what? The memory came back slow, like something surfacing from deep water. Something she'd been actively trying not to think about for over a year, pushing it down every time it tried to come up. Late evening, autumn last year, computer lab on the 2nd floor of the library building. Suyeon had been finishing some assignment, something minor, just formatting a document before printing it out. Most students had already left for the night. Lab was nearly empty. Just a few people scattered across the rows of desktop computers, everyone focused on their own screens with headphones in. That late-night study silence where nobody talks. Suyeon was about to pack up, shut down her computer, when she saw Taejin. This guy from a different section of their program, someone she barely knew. Maybe spoken to him twice total, once about a group project sign-up, and once when he asked if the printer on their floor was working. That was it. He was sitting at Jiwon's workstation. And here's the thing. Jiwon had left earlier. Suyeon had seen her pack up and head toward the exit around 9 p.m. Watched her go, because they sometimes walked to the same dorm building. But Jiwon's computer was still logged in. A lot of students did that, left their computers logged in when they went to grab coffee or use the bathroom or take a break. Unspoken rule in the lab that you don't touch someone else's workstation. Basic courtesy. Taejin, God, he was always this guy, you know. The one with the expensive North Face backpack, designer wallet he'd leave out on the desk like accidentally on purpose so people would see the brand, always talking about his dad's connections, acting like he owned whatever space he was in. He was accessing Jiwon's files. Suyeon watched from across the room, like 20 feet away behind a row of monitors, not quite understanding what she was seeing at first, because why would he be on her computer? He had a USB drive plugged in, one of those tiny ones, was systematically copying files from Jiwon's desktop, folders labeled with her thesis project title, research data files she'd been compiling for months, draft documents. He was being methodical about it, checking over his shoulder every few seconds to make sure nobody was watching. But he didn't see Suyeon sitting in the far corner, partially hidden behind the monitors, frozen in place, not sure what to do. Whole thing took maybe 5-6 minutes. Then he unplugged the USB quick, closed all the windows he'd opened on Jiwon's screen, and left. Just walked out like nothing happened. Suyeon sat there for a long time after he was gone, staring at Jiwon's empty workstation, trying to process what she'd just witnessed. Told herself maybe there was an explanation. Maybe they were working on a group project together and he had permission. Maybe Jiwon had asked him to grab files for her. But something about the way he checked over his shoulder moved quickly and quietly, like someone who knew they were doing something wrong, that stuck with her. 3 weeks later, Jiwon was accused of plagiarizing Taejin's thesis. The irony was so perfect it almost seemed planned. Taejin had submitted her stolen work first, with enough modifications that it looked like his original research, then filed an academic integrity complaint claiming Jiwon had copied from him. Complete reversal. Jiwon insisted it was her original work, provided her research notes, her timeline showing months of development, but Taejin was credible. Came from this influential family. His dad was a prosecutor or something. Mum worked in education, administration, had a strong academic record, had professors who vouched for him. And Jiwon couldn't definitively prove she'd created the work first, because Taejin had submitted his modified version before her actual thesis was due. University investigation lasted 2 weeks. Interviews, document analysis, the whole thing. They sided with Taejin. Jiwon was expelled. Academic dishonesty violation on her permanent record. Suyeon heard about it through campus gossip. Saw Jiwon's empty seat in the 2 classes they'd shared. Heard classmates whispering in hallways about how shocking it was, how nobody expected her to cheat. She'd always seemed so honest and hardworking. Some people were sympathetic, but most just accepted the university's decision. If they investigated and found her guilty, must be true, right? Suyeon considered coming forward. Spent days drafting messages she never sent. She could provide eyewitness testimony, prove the plagiarism accusation was backwards. But Taejin's family was powerful. His dad was a prosecutor. She was scared of retaliation, of being dragged into the investigation, of disrupting her own life for someone else's mess. Told herself it wasn't really her responsibility, wasn't her problem. The university had already investigated, already made their decision. Her speaking up probably wouldn't change anything at that point, would just make her life complicated for no reason. So she stayed silent, didn't come forward, didn't say anything to anyone. Ji-won disappeared from campus entirely after the expulsion, moved back to her hometown, somewhere outside Seoul. Word was she was completely devastated, couldn't handle the shame of being expelled for plagiarism, having that on her record permanently, her future basically destroyed. Suyeon heard all this secondhand, didn't reach out, didn't try to contact her, just went to her classes, studied for her own exams, moved forward with her degree, tried not to think about Ji-won's empty desk or the way she'd looked the last time Suyeon had seen her in the library, tired but smiling, making progress on her thesis that would end up being stolen and used to destroy her. 6 months ago, so that'd be like April, early spring, Suyeon saw a memorial post on the university's online community board, one of those pages where students share announcements and events. The post was brief, formal. Ji-won had taken her own life. Overdose. The post included basic details about a small memorial service her family was holding in Busan for close friends and former classmates who wanted to attend. Suyeon read it 3 times sitting in her dorm room, cold feelings spreading through her chest. Tried to process it, couldn't quite make it feel real even though the words were right there on the screen. Ji-won was dead, had been so destroyed by the expulsion and plagiarism accusation that was completely false, completely engineered by Taejin, that she'd ended her own life. And Suyeon could have prevented all of it, could have spoken up when it mattered. One testimony, one statement about what she'd witnessed in the computer lab would have changed everything. Taejin graduated that same semester with honors, posted about it all over social media, graduation photos, got a job at this prestigious law firm in Busan, probably through his dad's connections, posted pictures of his new apartment downtown, his orientation at the firm, captions about excited for this next chapter, and dreams coming true. Moved on, completely. No consequences, no guilt. Just success built on stolen work, and a destroyed life he'd never think about again. Suyeon attended Ji-won's memorial service, took the KTX down to Busan on a Saturday, stood in the back of the room during the service, didn't speak to anyone. Just stood there feeling guilt, pressing down on her shoulders like physical weight, making it hard to breathe, but she buried it. Told herself there was nothing she could have done at that point, that speaking up wouldn't have changed the outcome, that she couldn't have known it would end this way. Returned to Seoul that night, finished her semester, registered for full courses, kept moving forward. Until the Bunshinsaba ritual 3 weeks ago. The entity that came through that ritual wasn't Ji-won's ghost. Suyeon understood that now, sitting alone in her dorm room at 2 a.m. on the 6th day of constant scratching, sound coming from everywhere, walls, ceiling, inside her skull, making it impossible to think clearly. This wasn't a vengeful spirit seeking revenge. Wasn't Ji-won's soul coming back angry. It was something else entirely, something worse. The embodiment of Suyeon's own failure. The witness she should have been, but chose not to be. Given form by whatever door the ritual had cracked open. That pen scratching in endless circles was documentation, recording. The act of witnessing she'd refused to perform when it actually mattered, when her testimony could have saved someone. And now it would never stop, couldn't stop, because you can't undo that kind of failure. Can't go back and make a different choice. The guilt's permanent, and so's the scratching. She decided to try fixing it anyway, or at least try. 2:17 a.m., she drafted an email to the entire program distribution list. Everyone who'd been enrolled during Ji-won's expulsion, current students and recent graduates. Roughly 200 people. Subject line: The truth about Ji-won. Took her an hour to write. She detailed everything. What Taejin had done in the computer lab, the specific date and time, which workstation, what files he'd copied, why she'd stayed silent, the fear, the self-preservation, the cowardice, how that silence contributed to Jiwon's expulsion and death. She called Taejin a plagiarist and a liar, said the university had failed Jiwon by siding with wealth over truth, and that she'd failed her worse by having the truth and saying nothing. Included enough specific details, dates, locations, file names she remembered seeing on Jiwon's screen, the brand of USB drive Taejin used, stupid specific stuff, that anyone reading would understand this wasn't vague accusation. This was documented fact. Eyewitness testimony. Things someone who'd actually been there could know. Her finger hovered over the send button for like 10 minutes. The scratching was everywhere now, so loud she couldn't hear herself think. Constant circular scraping that felt like it was physically carving into her skull, leaving grooves in her brain. She hit send before she could change her mind. Email went out to 217 people at 2:29 a.m. For maybe 20 seconds, complete silence. The scratching stopped entirely. Just gone. Like someone had flipped a switch. Suyeon exhaled this shaky breath she'd been holding, started crying, relief flooding through her like she'd been underwater for a year and could finally surface and breathe. It worked. The entity got what it wanted. Acknowledgement, witnessing, truth spoken out loud instead of buried in silence. She thought it was over, thought she could finally sleep. 20 minutes later, the scratching came back, but different this time. Violent, fast, erratic. The pen on her desk. She left one there. Hadn't learned, kept making the same mistakes. Tore straight through paper, gouged deep scratches into the wood surface underneath, moved with this frantic energy that suggested rage instead of that patient documentation from before. Suyeon grabbed the pen, threw it hard across the room. Didn't matter. Scratching continued, coming from the walls, from inside her closed desk drawer, from everywhere at once, angry now in a way it hadn't been before. She realized, sitting on her bed with her hands pressed over her ears even though it didn't help, never helped, that the confession hadn't worked. And she understood why. Truth without consequences is just noise, just words disappearing into the void. Taejin was in Busan with his successful law career, completely unreachable, protected by distance and professional reputation, and the simple fact that he'd already won. The email would cause some gossip, sure. Might damage his reputation, slightly among people who chose to believe her. But he wouldn't face real consequences. Wouldn't lose his job. Wouldn't experience anything even close to what Jiwon had experienced. And Jiwon was still dead. Nothing Suyeon did now could change that. Couldn't bring her back. Couldn't undo her expulsion or her suffering or the despair that led to her overdose. The apology was meaningless because it came too late. The truth was useless because the person who needed to hear it most would never hear anything again. The scratching continued all night. By morning, it had decreased in intensity, quieted down, gone back to that patient circular pattern instead of the violent gouging. The entity had made its point, made sure Suyeon understood. Confession doesn't equal absolution. Truth doesn't equal justice. Some failures are permanent. Over the next 2 weeks, Suyeon received responses to her email. Got like 60 replies. Mixture of everything. Some classmates said they believed her, appreciated her coming forward even if it was late, thought it was brave to finally tell the truth. Some defended Taejin, said there was no concrete proof, accused her of trying to destroy his reputation out of jealousy or spite or mental instability. Some just didn't respond at all, deleted the email, wanted nothing to do with the drama. Taejin himself never acknowledged it, never reached out to threaten her or apologize or explain, just ignored it completely. Probably didn't even read it. Why would he? Some email from a former classmate wasn't going to touch him. University didn't reopen Jiwon's case either. Too late for that. She was dead, he was gone. The semester when it happened was long over, administratively closed. Nothing to investigate anymore. Nothing changed. Literally nothing. Suyeon finished the semester moving through thick fog, functioning on autopilot. Attended classes without absorbing information, took exams and somehow passed. Couldn't remember studying, but her grades came back fine. The scratching was always there in the background, faint but constant. This reminder that some failures leave marks you carry forever. Hyejin and Minseo reached out a few times. Noticed she looked exhausted. Asked if she was okay, if something was wrong. Both of them were totally fine, completely unaffected by the Bunshinsaba ritual. No haunting, no sounds, nothing. Just Suyeon experiencing it, just her. She told them she was dealing with exam stress, would be fine once semester ended. They believed her. Graduated spring 2024. Got a job offer from a corporate firm in Incheon. Decent salary, benefits. Normal office job doing contract review or something. Packed up her dorm room, left Seoul. Left everything behind. Thought maybe distance would help. For 2 months after moving, the scratching stopped. Complete silence. Nothing. Suyeon started relaxing. Let herself believe maybe it was actually over. Maybe she'd finally escaped. Started sleeping through the night again. Stopped jumping at every small sound. Began to feel almost normal. 6 months after the ritual, Suyeon was working late at her new job. Corporate office, all glass and steel and those identical cubicle pods. Looks like every other office building in Korea. Impersonal in that specific way modern offices are. It was 9:47 p.m. on a Thursday. Everyone else had left hours ago, but she was finishing this contract analysis report due the next morning. Her supervisor, this guy who never left on time and expected everyone else to match his schedule, had dumped it on her at 4 p.m. with a midnight deadline. Office was silent except for the fluorescent lights humming overhead and the distant sound of the building's ventilation system pushing air through ducts. That empty office quiet where every small sound echoes. Then she heard it, faint scratching. That slow, circular, deliberate pattern she'd know anywhere. Same sound from 6 months ago, unmistakable. Her entire body went cold. Hands stopped moving on the keyboard. She looked around the empty office, rows of identical desks stretching toward floor-to-ceiling windows, showing Incheon city lights beyond. The sound was coming from her desk, from inside her closed desk drawer, the one she kept locked because it had her passport and some personal documents. She stared at that drawer for a long time. Didn't want to open it. Knew she would anyway because ignoring it wouldn't make it stop. The scratching continued, patient, waiting for her to acknowledge it. She pulled the drawer open slow, hands shaking. Inside were normal things: pens, sticky notes, paper clips, hand sanitizer, a coffee mug she used sometimes, standard office supplies, and one pen, blue plastic ballpoint, identical to the one from the ritual, was rolling. Slow circles on the bottom of the drawer, just like the first night in the study hall, just like every night since. Suyeon closed the drawer immediately, didn't slam it, just pushed it shut, careful and quiet, like if she moved too fast she'd make it worse somehow. Packed up her laptop, grabbed her coat, left the office without shutting down her computer properly. walked out into cold October night and stood on the sidewalk outside the building, trying to remember how to breathe normally. Chest felt crushed, like something sitting on it, pressing all the air out. 6 months after the ritual, the scratching sound never really quits for good. It'll hush up for a bit, maybe a few days, or if she's got some luck on her side, even a whole week. But no, it always slinks back in. She's gotten used to it, kind of like how folks adapt to constant aches or that ringing in your ears, you know? It trailed her all the way from Seoul to Incheon, because it's not stuck to any spot on the map. Nah, it's hitched to her, to the guilt she's lugging around, the quiet she picked when she should have spoken up. Some choices you just can't take back. Some tabs stay open forever, and some doors, once you swing them wide and let something in, good luck slamming them shut again. Here's the thing though, if you see something wrong, go down, something really wrong, and you just don't say anything. That quiet, that silence, it doesn't just disappear because you want it to. It finds a way to mark you, stays with you. For Suyeon, it's scratching. Late nights when everything's quiet and you're alone. That sound, forever there. Some marks you can see on your skin, others you just hear. Either way, they never really fade.